Good morning, everyone. This is Jill Raven Stevenson of Juniper Sage. And I'll take you a little moment here. To show you what I'm looking at. Yay, this beautiful hillside. And my beautiful one that's also watching the hillside. One of them. Oh, here comes the other one. She's staying too close to me. And I'm going to start a series of just kind of musings. And the whole idea is to just bring up talking points and pondering. First 3 months that I launched this, I did more kind of teaching and grounding, and now I'm going to kind of just move into a little bit of musing. It's around the fall, and it's such a good time to kind of muse and reflect on things as we're kind of harvesting and really getting ready to seed what we want for the coming year. And it feels like such a big topic. It feels like so many different feelings are coming up in all these different realms, from some grief inside of me, at least, some joy and excitement of change, some resolution, some kind of like strength in my own constitution and self-regulating. And so when I was on my walk this morning, I was kind of feeling that strength of self-regulation, that gift of our boundaries, which I did a lot of like teaching around and sharing around in different forms over the last 3 months. So where this took me is the gift of diversity. And within that gift of diversity, it took me to the word community, and then it took me to the word of self-regulation, which is kind of my big fall word. Like, how am I truly doing? And honoring that and honoring what I need to fill my cup up. And then it also took me into the idea of diversity, boundaries. I can't remember what I said now. Sorry, I'm kind of scattered for a moment. So I've been thinking all these different things. I gotta let that feather. So the three things, let me just cap it that way, because I'm kind of rifting right now, is the gift of community, boundaries, and the gift of diversity. And then it took me into a reflective moment. I was talking to a friend last week about, I had completely forgot about this gift I was given. I was a recreation therapist, and I worked out of a group home that had various challenges. The people that lived there had various physical challenges and mental levels of acuity and diversity in that in itself. Like, they're challenged different ways that way. And I loved it. And what got me really reflecting to this next level I'm going to talk about is I love being of service. I love sharing my love. I love sharing my ideas. I love putting ideas into motion. I love collaborating. And I realized, like, that is the essence of community for me. And when I was working with those people with those different challenges, they had, from various ages, from very young to elderly. And I realized when I was talking to my friend, is that it was a place I was received unconditionally. Like, my love was received unconditionally. They are the most amazing powerhouses in their ability to receive love. And I never thought of it that way. And in that, they gave it so naturally to me, right? Even if I was having a bad day, maybe I didn't do that thing quite right. They just didn't care. They were just pure love and light. And I had never experienced that. I hadn't experienced it growing up. I hadn't experienced it even in my friend group. I hadn't experienced it at school. That level of unconditional love, both receiving it and also being received. And I think there's so much power in being received. So then that got me thinking about the gift of diversity. So one of the things I was quite aware of when I was growing up is that I pretty much look like everybody else around me. And there was very few people that would come in that had different skin tone, different ethnic backgrounds, and I was always wanting to know about them. I wanted to experience diversity, differences, and find in that this common thread of this need to have unity, this sense of belonging, this need to share our gifts, the need to be a part of something, and we've just had this very different relationship to diversity as a collective. And it's showing itself right now in the world as I'm filming this in September 2025. And it's, for me, who's somebody who just wants to love and share and be loved, it's confusing to me. Like, I get confused by it. And there's been so much harm and basically harm, I think that's the best word to say, towards our differences. So then I started kind of down this road of also this part of me that when I was little, my greatest joy was movement and sports. Like, I loved to kick balls, I loved to hit ball, I loved to know what my physical body could do. Like, I loved being in my physical body. I thought it was the coolest thing ever to do things. And when I grew up in the 60s, so there was this already couched what I could do and couldn't do, what I was allowed to do, what I was not allowed to do. So my dad was a race car driver, and I was allowed to be on my motorcycle, but I was not allowed to sit in his race car. It was like his domain. And I was like, that was very confusing to me. And I also was in that era of getting to experience the gift of all the women ahead of me and how Title IX became into being. And so all of a sudden, I don't have to play on the men's team, even though I liked it, because it would, I just loved playing, so I didn't care. We got to have, women got to have their own teams. There was this equality piece, which I am so grateful for. But the differences there, or the boundaries around that, were always interesting to me, because I always thought you could feel the struggle. I used to play there was two of us women that made this high-level soccer team, those traveling teams, and there was no place for us to play, but because of Title IX, and also because of where we were living at the time, there was this push to develop a girls program. So they had to keep the girls involved. But we had to try out, and two of us made this team. And you could watch, even at a young age, I could watch the struggle of boundaries. Like, the boys are like, well, this is our game, right? And this is our space. I'm so glad you're here. So there was this wide range of feelings in there. And I always thought that was so interesting to me around those transitional times of when we're transitioning to, this is our space, this is our culture, to all of a sudden there's different people and there's different genders and there's different ethnicity in our group. And there's some of us who are just love that. We see the value of that. And there are others who have different feelings around that. And so how do you accept both of those feelings? Which then takes me back to working with those wonderful people with just love and acceptance of what is, right? I could walk in, and I worked with many different people who had their own judgments and their own way of being with this beautiful population of ours. And they just didn't care. Like, they just loved them anyways. If you're having a bad day, if you were different than they were, they just loved you anyways. And I just think of the power of that, right? To just love you anyways for our differences. Like, I'm going to love you anyways, even when we're different. Which then takes me into our personal boundaries. And I think this is where, for me, I'm watching my own self feel into that, right? Like, so I have my own boundaries, my own mental space, my own way of seeing the world, right? My own way of connecting to the world, my own differences as a woman, my own differences as a multicultural woman, my own differences in an American woman, right? Like, I have my own differences. And so how do we create spaces where those differences, there's room at the table for all of them, and at the same time that we're leading ourselves with self-respect and respecting others? Like, how do we do that? And I just think it's such an interesting question, and it's a big question right now at this era of our time. And I'm watching all of these different ways that people are trying to be able to sit at the table together and yet hold boundaries of respect and no harm towards each other. Like, having some general rules around our the way that we relate to each other, which then reminds me of the Iroquois and how there's wealth there, there's rich knowledge there that, you know, for me, I crave for that rich knowledge of how the process that nation went to bring those tribes together to begin to live in this unity and the acceptance of differences, and yet having these boundaries of self-respect. And I just think it's a very interesting time that we're in. So I'd love to hear, you know, what are your thoughts on how can we all sit at the table together? What are your thoughts on diversity? How has it added to your life? How has it touched you? When have you experienced the gift of unconditional love? I really understand for me how it seeded my travels. So that gifted me the ability to go and live in another country, to share my gifts of that I grew through recreation therapy. It helped me in the way that I raised my children. Like, that gift of unconditional love has just been such a wealth for me. And I think those of you that have worked with that population can relate to what I'm saying. And those of you that maybe have not worked with that population, is there a space where you've had that experience, right? Is there a moment? I think of nurses. I think of how they tend to everyone, right? I think of, like, I don't know why, I'm reading this book called The Women. I forget who the author is, but it's about the nurses of Vietnam. And just, they were so loving in that moment to whoever was in front of them, whatever was happening for them. And they showed up for them. And just their experiences with all of that and afterwards. I don't know. I think it's on the forefront of my mind because I've been reading the book. So I just think, like, you know, what stories do we have around accepting and being with the gift of diversity? What are the stories we tell ourselves? What are the stories that we share with others? I'm sharing my story. Like, what story would you share with a friend next time you're with them? What story would you share with your children or your spouse or your partner or a friend or a family member? Like, what is the story of our diversity, and what are the gifts within it? And also, what are the challenges, right? So I know for me, one of my challenges is I just welcome everybody into my space. And I've had to really learn about self-regulation in my own energetic space, and how to sit within my own dignity and be able to share from there, that place of love. And to be discerning that that's the level I deserve, is unconditional love, right? To receive that from the world. I think that's why also I have such a love of nature. It's just so unassuming and unjudgmental. And it gives us such a playground to move through our experiences of life and to grow and enrich ourselves. All right, so I've rambled on now for about 16 minutes. And again, I'd love to hear your relationship to diversity, to unconditional love, to community and boundaries. Like, what does that bring up for you? Like I said, my word is very interesting. It's like self-respect, self-regulation. So it's that self-awareness and regulating that mindfulness. So I'll lead you with this, last little thought. I've been reading the book also called The Art of Power that my son recommended to me. And I'm just loving it, especially at this time when we're seeing such a contrast of what self-leading and leadership could look like, and how that level, what serves us and what does not serve us, right? As a whole unit, as that 9 tribes becoming one nation, right? Like, there was a process there that I know there's wisdom there. And sometimes I put out that wish to the universe. I'd love to sit when they're ready to share that knowledge with the world and really listen to what they have to say, because that's their gift to the table of life. All right, their history around that. So interesting, these times that we're in. May you find a thread of unconditional love this week. May you get to be filled by that. May you get to have this moment where you get to share your love unconditionally with another human being, whether that's a smile at a store or a conversation or however it shows up for you. May we continue to feed that connection to life that's unconditional and loves the gift of diversity, right? All right, many blessings, everyone. And I will see you next week with another little ramble.